At 0613 hours on February 9, 1944, Flight Officer Daniel Dane Walker climbed into the cockpit of P-40N Warhawk serial number 42-104829 parked on pierced steel planking at Nadzab Airfield in New Guinea. Walker was 22 years old, 41 missions flown, 0 confirmed kills. His squadron, the 8th Fighter Squadron, 49th Fighter Group, had been flying combat operations across the Huon Peninsula for 5 months. Their primary opposition came from the Tainan Air Group's remaining 0 pilots flying from Wewak and Madang. Nadzab was within striking distance of both. Walker's Warhawk did not look like the others parked along the revetment line. His fuselage carried mismatched panels, an olive-drab tail cone pulled from a crashed P-40E, a sand-colored right wing from a Kitty Hawk belonging to an Australian squadron, and a faded engine cowling that still bore fragments of a shark mouth from a different unit. Ground crewmen called it the scrap metal fighter. Some said it flew crooked. Others said it shouldn't fly at all. None wanted to sign their names next to it on the pre-flight sheet. But the P-40N had one feature the others lacked, a modification the engineering officer had refused to authorize, a modification Walker and his crew chief installed at 0200 hours, using salvage parts from a wrecked B-25 and a length of high-tension cable cut from a grounded C-47. It increased elevator response at low air speeds by reducing play in the trim linkage, and it was not approved by Curtis Wright, 5th Air Force Maintenance, or anyone above staff sergeant level. Walker didn't care. He had watched too many pilots die because the P-40's heavy control surfaces reacted slowly in turning fights. Against the 0, lighter, more agile, better climb rate, it was fatal. If you flew by the manual, you lived. If you deviated, you died. Walker had followed the manual for 41 missions. He had not fired a single shot in anger. He had flown escorts where Japanese fighters never appeared, and fighter sweeps where they never closed. He had watched his element leaders engage, lose altitude, break away, and score kills. He remained the wingman who never got a shot off. That morning would be different. At 0631 hours, intelligence reported Japanese fighters inbound from Wewak, 20 to 24 aircraft, likely a mix of A6M0s and Kai-43 Oscars. Estimated time to contact, 35 minutes. Walker's squadron scrambled 8 Warhawks, call sign Talon. They climbed to 9,000 feet, forming 2 flights of 4. Walker flew in Talon Yellow Section as Yellow 2. His element leader was Lieutenant Andrew Keeler, 7 kills, veteran of Ley and Finschhafen. Keeler didn't like Walker's airplane. During warm-up, he had said, "If that patchwork crate falls apart, don't expect me to circle." Walker acknowledged. He understood. They reached patrol altitude at 0704 hours. The sky was clear above scattered cumulus. To the northwest, the Finisterre Range formed a jagged blue wall. The sunlight caught the top edges of the peaks. Their flight maintained course 287 degrees at 210 miles per hour indicated. The air vibrated through the Warhawk's Allison V1710 engine, the propeller pulling at 2,200 RPM. Oil pressure 83 psi, coolant temperature 102 degrees Celsius, everything within limits. At 0709 hours, Keeler called out contrails at 2 o'clock high, descending fast, 12 zeros in stepped formation, another formation visible deeper in the haze, maybe 8 more. They had altitude advantage by at least 3,000 feet. Keeler ordered a shallow dive to build airspeed. The Warhawks dropped to 7,500 feet. The Allison engines roared. Airspeed climbed above 270 miles per hour. The 0 formations fanned out, diving in pairs. Standard Imperial Navy tactic. Top cover remained high. Lower elements attacked from oblique angles, forcing the defenders to split attention. Walker pushed his throttle forward. He watched the lead pair of Zeros angle toward Keeler. Sun glare flashed off their canopies. The distance closed rapidly. Keeler shouted, "Brake right!" The Warhawks separated, blue section braking high, yellow section braking low. Walker rolled right and down, pulling 3.8 G. His plane vibrated. The mismatched wing panels flexed slightly under load. The 0 overshot Keeler but rolled to chase him. Walker saw an opportunity. A Zero passed 400 yards off his nose, wings tilted for a climbing turn. Walker had never been in firing position before. His heart rate spiked, his grip tightened, not with fear, but because the Warhawk's control pressure required it. He pulled the stick left and back. The Warhawk responded instantly, not gradually, not delayed like the manual warned. Instantly. The unauthorized modification reduced slack in the elevator trim linkage. At low speed and high angle of attack, the tail responded faster, lifting the nose with less lag. The Warhawk snapped into the turn faster than any P-40 he had flown. Walker closed the angle of pursuit. The Zero's flat belly filled his gun sight. Range 250 yards. He fired. 6.50 caliber Brownings vibrated the wings. Brass casings ejected. The tracers arced toward the Zero. They struck the right wing root. Fuel mist ignited. The Zero rolled inverted and fell in a slow spiral. Walker watched until it vanished below cloud level. First kill. Keeler hadn't seen it. He was busy. 2 Zeros were on him, one above, one behind. Walker climbed to assist. His Warhawk clawed skyward. Rate of climb, about 2,100 feet per minute in war emergency power. The Zero climbing above Keeler reversed, diving toward Keeler's tail. Walker fired a short burst at long range, maybe 400 yards, but the tracers passed behind the Zero. The Zero dropped lower, chasing Keeler. Walker leveled off, turned inside the Zero's arc, and timed his burst. The Brownings rattled again. This time, the tracers connected. They struck near the cockpit. The canopy shattered. The Zero pitched down. Keeler shouted, "Good hit! He's out!" Second kill. 2 Zeros broke off from the second enemy formation and angled toward Walker. They approached from opposite sides. One high 4 o'clock, one low 8 o'clock. A pincer attack. Walker dove to increase speed. The P-40N held together through turbulence. Airspeed climbed past 320 miles per hour. The High Zero committed first, diving to match Walker's descent. Walker rolled left, then snapped right. The modified tail made the maneuver sharper. The Italian-built trim cable groaned under the load. The High Zero overshot. Walker pulled vertical. The Zero tried to follow but stalled at the top. Walker fired. The tracers struck the engine cowling. Smoke billowed. The Zero fell straight down. Third kill. The second Zero from the pincer tried a climbing attack from below. Walker shoved the throttle to the stop, rolled inverted, and dove. The Zero fired upward. 2 rounds struck Walker's right wing. One passed clean through the Australian repaired panel. The other dented an internal rib without penetrating the fuel tank. Walker released a long burst. The Zero broke off violently and rolled away. Walker followed. At 240 miles per hour, both aircraft leveled. The Zero turned left for a scissors. Walker anticipated. He reversed early, his modified tail giving him the momentary response advantage needed. The Zero rolled out of the turn directly in front of him. Range 180 yards. He fired into the Zero's left side. Fuel ignited. The aircraft burned, then dropped. Fourth kill. The fight shifted to lower altitude. Scattered clouds forced maneuvering between layers. Walker's Warhawk descended to about 4,000 feet. Keeler regrouped what remained of Yellow Section. Only 2 aircraft left. Blue Section had lost 2 planes in the initial dive. The radio crackled with short calls. Gunfire flashed above the cloud deck. Then Walker saw it. A lone Zero diving from 7,000 feet, lining up on Keeler's tail. Keeler didn't see him. Walker rolled into a climbing left turn. G-forces pulled at his shoulders. The Warhawk strained, nearly stalling, but the elevator responded. He cleared the stall edge, lifted the nose, and saw the Zero commit to the attack on Keeler. Walker had one chance. He squeezed the trigger. The Brownings roared. 21 rounds struck the Zero's left wing and fuselage. The Zero exploded in midair, fragments scattering into the cloud layer. Fifth kill. Keeler shouted, "He's gone! Walker! You got 5!" Walker didn't respond. He scanned the sky for more threats. The battle was not over. More Zeros descended from the second formation. 4 angled toward the remaining Warhawks, flying tight line abreast. Walker's ammunition was halfway depleted. He checked gauges. Fuel, 62 gallons. Oil temperature rising. The mismatched panels on his wings hummed under wind load. Keeler ordered everyone to dive toward the Markham Valley. Walker followed. They descended to 3,000 feet. The terrain rose ahead, rolling foothills and dense jungle. At 290 miles per hour, Warhawks could outdive Zeros. Walker used the speed to create separation. Ground control directed them east toward friendlier territory. The Zeros pursued for 2 minutes, then broke off. Their fuel limits prevented extended chase. The remaining Warhawks formed on Keeler's wing. Only 3 had returned from the engagement. Walker's airplane bore 2 bullet holes, a cracked starboard flap hinge, and a dented cowling panel. They landed at Nadzab at 0749 hours. The ground crew gathered around Walker's Warhawk. They examined the bullet holes. They checked the trim cables. They looked at Walker without speaking. Keeler approached, his face streaked with sweat and dust. He slapped the fuselage of Walker's patched-together aircraft. "It flies," Keeler said. "Somehow, it flies." Walker climbed down. His legs shook from adrenaline. He didn't have time to reflect. The engineering officer was already approaching with a clipboard. He examined the elevator linkage, traced the cable to the tensioner Walker and his crew chief had installed. A section of repurposed B-25 trim cable, a non-standard junction, not authorized, a clear maintenance violation. The officer's expression hardened. Walker waited. The officer finally said, "We'll discuss this later." Then he looked at the scoreboard on the operations truck. 5 chalk marks next to Walker's name. The officer hesitated, then walked away. Debriefing lasted 2 hours. Walker recounted each engagement, providing ranges, angles, and ammunition counts. Intelligence compared his description to eyewitness reports from Keeler and Blue Section. The numbers matched. 5 confirmed kills. Squadron headquarters filed the report. 5th Air Force personnel reviewed it by late afternoon. A Warhawk with mismatched panels and unapproved modifications had generated one of the squadron's highest single-sortie kill counts of the year. But the day wasn't finished. At 1550 hours, radar reported another Japanese formation inbound. 12 fighters, 6 bombers. Walker's aircraft was damaged but flyable. Ground crew replaced the starboard flap hinge and patched the cowling. They replenished ammunition. Fuel tanks were topped off. The Warhawk taxied to the runway at 1608 hours. The sun angled low. Shadows stretched across the Markham Valley. Walker joined 7 other P-40s for the second scramble of the day. Walker rolled onto the runway with the rest of the 8th Fighter Squadron. Oil streaks on the patched cowling vibrated under engine torque. The Allison engine settled at 2,350 RPM. Coolant temperature reached 108 degrees Celsius. Oil pressure 86 pounds per square inch. The evening air over Nadzab shimmered in the heat. A red signal flare arced upward from the operations tent. Takeoff clearance. Keeler led Blue Section. Walker flew with Yellow Section again, slotting into position behind Lieutenant Joel Marks, a recent replacement pilot with only 6 combat sorties. They lifted from the steel mat runway at 16:12 hours. Climb out was slow at first in the heavy, humid air. They turned northeast over the Markham Valley, climbing to 8,000 feet. The coastline beyond Leh shimmered in the reddish haze of late afternoon. They leveled at 12,000 feet as ground control directed them toward the estimated interception point, 20 miles northwest of Nadzab. The 2nd Japanese formation was organized differently. Rather than a fighter sweep, this was a mixed strike package. Radar reported 6 Ki-48 Lily bombers flying in a staggered V at 14,000 feet, protected by 12 Zero fighters, 4 high cover, 4 close escort, 4 tail-end overwatch. The Lily bombers were twin-engine light bombers used frequently in the New Guinea campaign. Payload usually consisted of 220-pound fragmentation bombs or 500-pound general-purpose bombs. Their airspeed was roughly 270 miles per hour in level flight. Their defensive guns could break up uncoordinated attacks, but they relied heavily on fighter escort. Keeler ordered an intercept climb. The Warhawks boosted power. Cylinder head temperatures rose. They climbed steadily toward the bomber's altitude. At 16:24 hours, the enemy formation appeared as black silhouettes against the sun. The escorting Zeros maintained tight discipline. They had altitude advantage. Keeler angled slightly down sun to hide the squadron's approach. His plan mirrored common P-40 doctrine. Use altitude where possible, make high-speed diving passes, and disengage before the Zeros could trap them in turning fights. But the Zeros saw them. 4 Zeros from top cover peeled off and dove toward the Warhawks. The remaining escorts tightened around the bombers. Keeler gave the order. Blue section, take top cover. Yellow section, follow me. We go for the bombers. Marks hesitated. His voice crackled through the radio. Sir, fighters inbound. Shouldn't we... Keeler cut him off. Bombers are priority. They're heading for Nadzab. Walker saw the Zeros descending, bright specks against the fading sky. Their formation was tight. They were experienced. If the Warhawks committed to the bombers, they would take fire from above. But letting 6 Lily bombers reach Nadzab meant casualties on the ground. Walker understood Keeler's decision. Keeler nosed over into a shallow dive aimed at the bomber formation. Yellow section followed. Airspeed increased past 310 miles per hour. The bombers grew larger in Walker's gun sight. Their formation maintained discipline, gunners ready. The tail-end Zeros reacted first. They broke formation and climbed to intercept the diving Warhawks. Their speed advantage was gone in the climb. They met the Warhawks head-on. Machine gun fire flashed across the sky. Marks fired too early. His tracers passed under a Zero without hitting it. The Zero rolled inverted, dropping into a tight spiral that forced Marks to break away. Marks lost his position in the formation. Keeler stayed focused on the bombers. At 1,200 yards, the Lily formation filled his sight line. At 900 yards, their gunners opened fire. Tracer lines crisscrossed the air. The bombers' dorsal guns rattled. The sky shimmered with heat and smoke trails. Walker held steady behind Keeler. At 700 yards, Keeler opened fire. His .50 caliber rippled in bright arcs. Rounds punched into the rightmost Lily's port engine. Flames erupted. The bomber yawed and began a slow descending turn. Walker selected the second bomber from the right. Range 800 yards. Too far. He held fire. Airspeed 345 miles per hour. Closing fast. The bomber's tail gunner fired. Tracer rounds streaked past Walker's canopy. One struck his port wing root, denting the skin but not penetrating. Range 500 yards. Walker fired a 3-second burst. The tracers walked across the Lily's fuselage, striking near the wing root. Smoke appeared. The bomber shuddered. The right engine backfired and burst into flame. The Lily dropped out of formation, losing altitude rapidly. Behind him, the Zeros descended. Keeler's voice cut through the radio. Break! Break! Fighters inbound! Walker rolled left and pulled into a climbing turn. A Zero passed 40 yards beneath him. The Japanese pilot snapped into a tight turn to pursue. At low speed, a Zero would normally outturn a Warhawk. But Walker's elevator modification changed the equation. He tightened the turn. The Warhawk's tail responded instantly, allowing Walker to nose around faster than the Zero expected. The Zero overshot. Walker snapped into a descending right turn, inverted, then leveled. The Zero blew past in front of him, unable to tighten the turn radius. Range 300 yards. Walker fired. The burst tore into the Zero's right wing. The fighter rolled, caught fire, and fell into a vertical dive. Not a confirmed kill. Too fast to be certain. The debris looked significant, but Walker needed verification. He didn't have time. A second Zero appeared above his canopy, diving at a steep angle. Walker dove for speed. The Warhawk accelerated. He rolled right, then left. The Zero followed, but began to lag in the split S maneuver. Walker reversed. Left rudder, stick back. The Warhawk pitched sharply. The elevator linkage shuddered under the load, but held. The Zero crossed in front of him for half a second. He fired a short burst. Tracers punched into the Zero's tail. The aircraft wobbled, then dropped rapidly. No explosion, but heavy smoke trailed behind it. The bombers were still inbound. 4 remaining, maintaining course toward Nadzab. Keeler regrouped. Yellow section, form up. We're going again. Walker checked his remaining ammunition. Left wing guns, 57 rounds each. Right wing guns, 63 rounds each. Enough for 2 more effective passes. They climbed through scattered clouds to 11,000 feet. The bombers were now descending on approach trajectory, likely preparing for level bombing run. If they reached 8,000 feet, anti-aircraft guns at Nadzab could engage them, but damage would be likely. Keeler led the second attack from below the bomber formation. They approached from the 6 o'clock low position, a blind spot for the dorsal gunner when the aircraft descended. At 400 yards, Keeler opened fire. His tracers ripped into the central Lily's fuselage. The bomber's belly compartment erupted in flame. The aircraft broke formation and rolled onto its side, losing altitude rapidly. The remaining 3 bombers tightened formation. Walker targeted the leftmost bomber. He fired a 1-second burst at 300 yards. The tracer struck the starboard engine. Flames erupted. The bomber began a slow roll to the right. 2 remaining. A Zero descended behind Walker, firing. Tracers slammed into his starboard wing. 1 round penetrated the Australian wing panel but didn't hit the fuel cell. Walker broke left. The Zero pursued. Walker saw it in his mirror, gaining. He dropped throttle momentarily, then snapped into a left roll. The modified elevator trimmed the aircraft sharply. The Zero overshot. Walker reversed again. The movements were violent. His seat harness cut into his shoulder. His vision blurred from the G-forces. He lined up behind the Zero for half a second. He fired. The Zero disintegrated in a flash of fuel and flame. Fragments scattered across the sky. Keeler's voice came through the radio. "Walker, you clear?" "Clear." "Bombers still inbound. 2 left. We have to finish this." Walker leveled off at 9,500 feet. He aimed for the left bomber again. The dorsal gunner fired. Rounds passed over his canopy, range 250 yards. He fired a concentrated burst. The rounds tore into the bomber's central fuselage. The dorsal gunner slumped. Smoke flooded the bomber's cabin. The left engine erupted in fire. The bomber dropped out of formation. 1 left. Keeler took lead. Walker followed. The last Lily bomber descended toward Nadzab. The Warhawks closed from behind. The bomber's tail gunner fired continuously. Tracers streaked past Walker's canopy. Keeler fired first. The bomber shuddered. A panel sheared off the fuselage. But the bomber held altitude. The pilot was committed. Walker angled left. He gained an oblique position on the bomber's underside. The gunner could not depress the weapon far enough. Walker fired a 2-second burst. Rounds punched through the underside of the bomber, ripping into fuel tanks. An explosion rocked the bomber. Flames trailed behind it. The aircraft broke apart, losing control. The bomber dove into the canopy of trees below. No more enemy aircraft remained in sight. Silence settled in Walker's cockpit. Keeler called, "Mission accomplished. Talon Squadron, return to base." Walker's Warhawk shuddered from stress. Temperature readings climbed. His ammunition was nearly exhausted. Fuel 38 gallons. He kept the engine at low power to preserve coolant. They circled toward Nadzab. The sun was dipping below the ridgeline. Shadows lengthened across the runway. Ground crews stood ready as the Warhawks approached. Walker descended on final approach, lowering flaps that creaked under the patched hinge. He touched down at 16:58 hours. The Warhawk rolled to a stop. The engine coughed once, then settled into low idle. He opened the canopy. Cool air rushed in. Ground crewmen surrounded the aircraft, counting bullet holes, assessing damage. Mark's Warhawk had returned with a damaged radiator. Keeler's left wing had a fist-sized hole near the leading edge. Walker's plane bore 5 new bullet scars, a cracked exhaust stack, and a fragment lodged in the engine cowling. The high-tension cable modification remained intact. The engineering officer arrived again. He said nothing at first. He studied the cable. He traced the linkage. He looked at Walker. Then he said, "This stays off the record." He walked away. In the operations tent, the intelligence officer compared pilot reports. Walker had scored 5 confirmed 0 kills in the morning, plus 2 more probable in the afternoon engagement. He had destroyed 2 Lily bombers. Combined, his sorties had prevented a bombing run that could have killed dozens of ground personnel. The squadron commander reviewed the findings. He added Walker's kills to the roster. 7 confirmed. 2 probable, one of the highest single-day tallies in the region. That evening, Walker sat on an ammunition crate near his aircraft. The sunset illuminated the mismatched panels, olive, sand, faded gray. The Warhawk's patched wing bore fresh soot from the day's battles. Its engine ticked as it cooled. Keeler approached. He rested his hand on the fuselage. "You were right about the elevator response," Keeler said. "It shouldn't work, but it does." Walker nodded. Keeler added, "Command put in paperwork. You're being moved to lead yellow section." Walker didn't respond immediately. He looked at the Warhawk, the aircraft that ground crewmen had mocked, the plane patched from 3 different airframes, the fighter nobody wanted to fly. Keeler stepped back. "You keep this plane running, Walker. I don't know how, but you do. Orders came the next morning. Walker was scheduled for advanced gunnery training with 5th Air Force instructors. His transfer would occur within 2 weeks. The squadron would receive new P-40Ns by then. His patched-together Warhawk would likely be stripped for parts, the unauthorized trim modification removed, the aircraft logged as unserviceable. But on February 9, 1944, it flew, it fought, it survived battles it should not have survived, and it carried a pilot who, for one day, changed the balance of the sky over New Guinea. The paperwork for his aerial victories moved through channels. The numbers were verified. Statements from Keeler and the rest of Yellow Section supported them. Headquarters issued the citation 2 weeks later. Flight Officer Daniel Walker received the Distinguished Flying Cross for extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight. His citation included the words, "He engaged superior enemy forces on multiple occasions, displayed exceptional tactical initiative, and destroyed enemy aircraft, despite operating a heavily damaged and non-standard fighter." The Warhawk that carried him through those engagements was never mentioned by name. Not the mismatched wings, not the patched cowling, not the unapproved cable, not the scrap metal fighter. Those details stayed on the ground at Nadzab, known only to the pilots and crew who watched the aircraft return when others did not. Walker left New Guinea in early March. He flew new aircraft afterward, fresh from the factory, painted the same color, maintained the same way. None flew quite like the patched Warhawk. None responded the same way under high G. None carried the scars of battle in overlapping layers of metal from 3 different airframes. But none needed to. The war moved north. The squadron followed. Pilots rotated in and out. Ground crews changed. Aircraft came and went. The sky above Nadzab remained quiet. And somewhere along the runway edge, on pierced steel matting warmed by the New Guinea sun, fragments of Walker's scrap metal fighter were stacked in a salvage yard. Silent, worn, and unmistakably part of a plane that had done what no one believed it could do. The record showed the results. 5 zeros before breakfast, 2 more probable before dusk, 2 bombers destroyed, a pilot promoted, a squadron protected, a base saved. The patched aircraft, the one they mocked, had done its job, and for one day, it had ruled the sky.